Well, good morning. What an honor to be back in this space. I was thinking as Pastor G was here earlier in the announcements and opening chapel this morning that, man, it's been, you can tell I'm old. I mean, I first came to this campus 30 years ago and have gathered in this space regularly since then. In fact, I came to campus in the same role that Pastor G is in right now. That was my first time here. So it's an honor to be always in this place and to be a part of this community and to participate in what happens here in this place. So I came across something I want to share with you just recently. I really need your opinion about whether it fits. You probably won't be able to tell me during chapel, but maybe afterwards shoot me an email or front up here, tell me if it sort of fits right. I found an AI-generated song, or it's really song lyrics, in the spirit of Taylor Swift. I thought, whoa. It's sort of it's intended, I mean, the person who posted it, used AI to sort of say, take the spirit of Taylor Swift. It's kind of in one of these Swifty websites. And there's lots of those out there. And take the spirit of Taylor Swift and use kind of a montage of her themes and other things in her repertoire and create a song. And mostly focus on Powerball. And the song is called Shattered Reflections. Let me share it with you. In the depths of my soul, a darkness resides, a shattered reflections where secrets hide. A light that once shone now fades away, leaving behind shadows that dance and sway. I'm trapped in this labyrinth of my own design, haunted by memories I can't leave behind. The pain cuts deep, it's an endless fight as I search for the truth in the dead of night. Shattered reflections, I'm lost in the haze, trying to find myself in this endless maze. The pieces of my heart scattered on the floor, a broken mirror I can't ignore. In the silence of the night, the demons creep, whispering secrets that make me weep. The weight of my shoulders, it's hard to bear as I navigate through this world of despair. It's a pretty biting song. You tell me later if it fits. Her beautiful and extensive repertoire. But it's not a bad backdrop. Whether it fits Taylor Swift or not, it's not a bad backdrop for Ash Wednesday today and for the entrance into the season of Lent. The scriptures that Pastor G just read sort of set this thing up for us in the book of Genesis. You know what's going on there. Those chapter 2 at the end of Genesis sort of wraps up the Bible's two creation stories, chapter 1 and chapter 2, and it comes to that remarkable and beautiful conclusion at the end of chapter 2 with that phrase, and the first humans were naked and unashamed. And then you know what happens in chapter 3. In chapter 3, you've got this devastating litany of humanity's own undoing. And little by little, piece by piece, the image in which they were born is broken. Their shattered brokenness that has infected every one of us ever since. That's really what Lent is about. I mean, you know the story. Most of us know the story. The serpent slithering into the role of human volition and talking to those first humans, and then the questioning of the goodness and truthfulness of God's command, and then the luring temptation of the good gifts of creation. It's usually the good gifts of creation that tempt us, or at least a warped image of those good gifts of creation. The luring temptation of the good gifts of creation. That tree looks good for food. It's a delight to the eyes. It's desired to make one wise. And then finally in that litany, you have the first human being succumbing to the seductions of sin. And the rest, as they say, is history. Literally our history. The rest is history, literally our history. It's the story of our lives. It's the story of the lives of all humanity. If Genesis 1 and 2 and 3 tell us anything, is that this problem is warp and woof of what it means to be human. And there is no one who is exempt. Except one who's not in the story yet in these pages. It's the story of our lives. Once naked and unashamed, they now realize that they are naked, and so with shame they find a way. They sew fig leaves to cover themselves up. And in that one theopoetic moment, that shattered, broken reflection that was once ours is broken, and now that broken reflection is imprinted on every one of us, on the very core of our being. The original radiance, the original beauty, and the original radiance of God's very presence, God's very divine image within us was shattered and broken. It's as though those first human beings were mirrors of God. Got a mirror with me today. You know, if I look in that mirror, I see myself. If you look in that mirror, if you're close enough, you can probably see yourself. But they were mirrors, but a different kind of mirror than this mirror. Because those mirrors early on were two-way mirrors. They were mirrors in which humanity could look at other human beings and see something of the image of God, see something of the beauty of God in the other, and even if they recognized it in themselves as well. But two ways, because through that mirror, God could also look at human beings and see something of God's very own divine image in them. And that's how God created you and me to be. And in that moment, that beautiful image was shattered. And you know, it's still there. There's still an image there. But it's broken, it's marred, it's defaced, and it can't be put together again by ourselves. It's there, but it's broken into pieces. It still reflects the divine image, but it's hard to see. You can't make it out. Its reflection is now fragmented in 1,000 pieces, and it's incomplete. And that Genesis story in quick succession makes clear what was involved. There's a loss of innocence. That's why that nakedness theme keeps coming up. Some of you have little children perhaps at home, or you remember the innocence of a little baby. They don't mind being naked because there's innocence there, and they don't recognize it. But that beautiful image of the first humans at the end of chapter 2 is very quickly squashed in verse 7 when it says, "Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized that they were naked, and they were ashamed." And then later in the story, part where we did not read, it says, when they're talking now to God, God says, "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten of the fruit of that tree?" It's a loss of innocence. And we are all caught up in that loss of innocence. Sooner or later, usually sooner, 12 months, 18 months, we turn in upon ourselves. And we begin to want our own way and then demand our own way and do what we want to do and not what the very image that's broken still there in us yearns for us to do and to be. In Genesis chapter 3 says there was a loss of clarity and discernment, that those pristine human beings who had the capacity, the capability, the kapax dei, the ability to relate to God, now turn more to relate to themselves and what their own desires are. They turn inward. And because of that, there's a loss of the pristine piece of creation that God intended for the world to be. Also, outside of the reading that we read today, you know when God starts speaking to them in order, first to the serpent, then to the woman, and then to the man. When God talks to the serpent, he says, "I'm going to put enmity between you and the woman." And ever since, human beings have been slogging through creation, trying to tame it rather than tend it. Tend the garden, God said. And there was enmity between them, a loss of that the whole creation itself is out of sync with what God wanted it to be because of what happened in Genesis. And it's our story. So much so that the Apostle Paul, many, many years later, is going to echo it and says that all of creation groans, yearns for the day of redemption, for things to be made right again somehow, to be put back together the way God intended them to be. And then there's a loss of mutuality between people. Verse 16, when God speaks to the woman, he says, "I'll greatly increase your pangs in childbearing, and in the pain you shall bring forth children. Yet your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you." The oppression of one gender over the other was never a part of God's original intent for creation. Never. It was a consequence of the brokenness of humanity, where somehow we got things out of sync and there was no longer this beautiful mutuality that is so beautifully pictured in chapter 1 of Genesis. And God created Adam in God's image, male and female. God created Adam. They're the same stuff, and they're equal. And because of the consequence, it becomes broken. And then there's a loss not only of innocence and discernment and the pristine peace of creation and mutuality between people, but there's a loss of meaningful vocation and purpose in life. He says to the man that you're going to work by the sweat of the brow for the rest of your life, and toil you shall eat all the days of your life, and thorns and thistles of creation are going to keep on coming no matter what you do. And you're just going to slog it through as a consequence of this brokenness. Welcome to Lent. But perhaps greatest of all, or maybe I should say it the other way, worst of all, is the loss of limitation. Chapter 3, 1 through 7, the passage that we did read really talks about this loss of limitation where human beings somehow in that narrative of Genesis chapter 3 decide that they can make God not a being with whom they ought to relate in intimate communion, but a being to be examined. Did God say? Maybe God's trying to keep something from us. You see, they make God an object. God cannot be an object. You see, for human beings to step outside of the framework of their limitation meant a radical freedom that would only be their own undoing. And we've been trying to express that radical freedom ever since. Because we push against any kind of boundaries. Lent, my friends, is about recognizing the shattered state of our lives. Lent is about striving to see the residual, gleaming beauty of God's presence still there within us. Lent is about yearning for the day, groaning with creation when all that is shattered and all that is broken will one day be restored to its primitive and pristine beauty and wholeness. Lent is about seeing the brokenness of our lives and in seeing it, saying yes to God's lifelong journey of restoration. Lent is about crying out with Isaiah, "Woe is me, for I am undone." Today is Ash Wednesday. And as Pastor G said a moment ago at the conclusion of our chapel this morning, they'll be stationed up here with Dr. McPherson, and I'll be here, and Pastor G will be in the center section there. If you'd like, we're going to invite you on your way out of chapel to come and simply receive the sign of a cross and hear those words, "From dust you came, and to dust you shall return," so that you can remember your limitation and therefore fall full on in the arms of God who cares for you and seeks to make you whole again. That AI song has a bridge and an outro. But in the darkness, a flicker of hope, a glimmer of strength to help me cope. I'll gather the fragments piece by piece and find the beauty in pain's release. Through the shattered reflections, I'll find my way. Embracing the darkness, I'll rise and stay. In this journey of healing, I'll reclaim my light and turn these shattered reflections into stars shining bright. Friends, only God can do that. And that's what this season is about. If you will, would you stand with me? And I'll give a benediction and then invite you to, if you'd like to come for ashes, please do that on your way out. Dear friends, now go from this place. Go from this place and step into the journey of Lent, knowing that God goes with you and seeks to restore everything that is shattered and broken in your lives. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.